But like talking about equality, since you mentioned that, I feel like a lot of men are still confused because feminism has the word fem in it. So they think it's about women, but feminism is equality. So how do we decode that for the men?
We don't. Some things you just have to come to yourself, right? I think that very often we've talked about sort of the emotional labor of women, which is, I think, been at the forefront of any conversation we're going to have with regard to, and not just the emotional labor of women, but any marginalized community as well, right? A lot of the onus of education comes back down to those who are suffering, or those who are oppressed, or those who are less than, or made to feel less than. Right? Whereas the burden of knowledge, or the burden of educating oneself, should be largely on the people who lack that education but have the access to that education. Right? If you don't have access to education, it's a whole other story. But breaking down words such as feminism, for example, for men is not on women. On women is to uplift each other, to uplift those who have less than us, those who have less access than us, those who have less privilege than us, whether that is women, whether that is people of different races, sects, minorities, people living with disabilities, all sorts of things. Because I feel like the thing about progress and equity is not built for one demographic or one kind of person, right? If we are all more equal, we are all more equal. Whether you're a woman, whether you're a person of a different race, whether you're a person of a different religion, that's the only way to approach it. That is the way progressives have always approached it, right? But I think that where we get into sort of the identity of it, right, where we only want to uplift our own kind, that is exactly the kind of thinking that puts these places, or puts these sort of inequities in place in the first place, that I will only look out for my own kind. So then therefore it's fair for men to say I will only look out for my own kind. So if women are going to think that the purview of feminism only goes to other women, men are actually some of the hugest beneficiaries of feminism today, because men are able to talk to their friends and say, it's so often now you will see men wearing more pink. Yes, it's not radical, but it's a start. Wearing jewelry, nail paint, and that's all still extremely just sartorial and very superficial. You have men now telling each other, hey man, I love you, to their male friends, which we do all the time, right? You're going to hang up on a woman you've known for 3 months and be like, hey, I love you. And that's just the most normal thing to say. It makes me feel better. It makes you feel better. It makes the world a better place. So if the access to that kind of emotional vulnerability and the practice of emotional vulnerability that feminism brings to men is something to be looked at and something to be nurtured, not to deconstruct the word and saying, oh, it has feminism in it, so it now means that from a patriarchy we go to a matriarchy. If your conversation is at that level, then perhaps some education is required in order for you to get out of that. But the moment you do, men might see that it is more emancipating for them, right? I mean, emancipating does have the word man in it. So in order to feel like you are part of something bigger and better, one has to move out of these sort of silos of identities that we see ourselves in, and see ourselves as a society, and how can I as an individual feed into making sure that my immediate society is one that is more equitable, and what does it mean for me to contribute in a way outside of just me as a woman reaching out to a woman. Right? Of course, our first duty is towards the younger, at least I feel this way as an elder sibling to 2 younger sisters. I always feel like I have to do that first. That is my first duty at home, right? To ensure that there is a more equitable environment for them. However, how do I imbue equity into the way I deal with, for example, people that I don't consider like myself? That is where it starts. When you create a practice out of it, everybody benefits from it.
Everybody does benefit from feminism. Men especially do. But it's that change mentality, right? Something's changing, and it's changing by a gender that is not in a hierarchy. So obviously they're doing it for their benefit, is what is constantly thought about. And I don't think people like change. People don't like change. And if they've been doing this for so many years, and as per them it's working, even though it's not working, it's just about, why should I go through that change, right? why do I have to make this change when for years we've been the hunters? And it's that point that holds men back about making that change, even as small as like getting married and your wife is allowed to earn
Mhm.
or run a business, but she also has to take a year off to get pregnant, and then she also has to take the next year off because the child is too small, and then she also has to take a year off because he's just gone into school. So it all starts to become onto the woman
Mhm.
eventually. People are progressive, but then certain things are just women oriented. So how do we deal with that?
I think the easiest way to, or the sort of most important way to do this is to, again, like I said, redefine the idea of labor itself, the
Mm.
definition of labor, right? We see work that earns you money as labor and work that doesn't earn you money as not labor, which is strange because work that doesn't earn you money is actually more laborious because work that earns you money is just a transaction. You are doing something and you are getting paid for it fairly or unfairly, of course, is up for debate, but women raising children are doing it absolutely for free. But if you are to put that same child in childcare, that is extremely expensive because suddenly it's not your child anymore. Men will, sit around with their kids, spend time with them, and call it babysitting. It's your baby. Who are you sitting? So suddenly it becomes labor the moment the man is doing it. And again, this is obviously a generalized statement, but the way to sort of change that is again to just change the definition of labor in one's mind. Any work done that has any positive outcome, or well, positive outcome of course is subjective, but any work done is labor, right? So if we're able to give it the due respect and the due credence that is deserved to it, suddenly we have people realizing that these things take time, they cost resources, right? Making food every day is not an easy task, right? Ask someone who does it for a living, for example, and they will tell you that, oh my God, food is so important and it is such a delicate craft. But the mother that's doing it at home every day, 3 times a day, we're taking it for granted. We're not seeing that as labor. We're seeing it as an entitlement of food on our table. So, the moment we sort of unpack that idea of what constitutes labor, we suddenly see that women are doing a lot of heavy lifting that they have absolutely no thanks for, no resources being dispensed to to them for, and definitely no recognition for. And which I think is the most important of the three, because at the end of the day, we're simple people. We want to be acknowledged. We want to be seen in the world. We want to be acknowledged as people who have value, right? Therefore, you see some women take a lot of pride in their cooking, a lot of pride in the way that they present their home. But when we don't affirm that pride that they feel, we suddenly make them feel like their work doesn't have worth or value. And that is, a slippery slope, because then you're saying that only when you sort of work for someone, create more profit for a corporation, that you still see the same salary. So, sure, you can work hard if you want, or you can slack off if you want, but you're making them money, so you have value. But when you're making your own family happy, when you're making your own the people around you, your society, your community happy, suddenly that is devalued. And that doesn't work for anyone.
Yeah. And I think that comes from that transaction of when a man goes out, he brings in money, and money is seen, and it brings a certain value, and it brings a certain expectation of how they're going to live their life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think society measures that, right? So I do have a lot of men writing in to me saying that if we don't make the money, if we don't constantly work, however hard it is, like it's taking a toll on their mental health, it's taking a toll on their relationships, they are not respected.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen this constantly where there is a combination of respect and the amount that a man brings into the house. And this is coming from, like, it's generations. Like, everyone in society somehow is like, so how much do you, like, what's your package? At least for like a newbie. So, what's the
Yeah.
package? So, somewhere it's related. So, is the amount of money a man brings in specifically into his family, is that related to respect?
So far, generally, yes. Right? Because that is how we've been learned to navigate. That's how we've been taught to navigate how we respect people. In fact, if you meet someone, for example, at a party for the first time, right? you're going to ask them, hey, what do you do for a living? What we're actually trying to do is see where we need to slot them in terms of the amount of respect we have to give them. So someone says, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer. Yeah. You'll be like, oh, cool, very cool. Then you'll ask them, what kind of law do you practice? Or what kind of doctor are you? And then you'll sort of uh, uh, place them again in the hierarchy in your mind. You'll try to categorize them as to how much respect and how much of my attention should I give to them. Or they might be like, oh, I'm a housewife. And suddenly you're like, oh, okay, cool. That's an interesting choice. That's a bold choice, right? Or you might say something like that. Whereas to me or to somebody else, that might be the more interesting question that, hey, what choices have led you to that? Do you find that you're a housewife out of choice, or is that something you need to do because you need to be at home for XYZ reasons, right? That is a much richer conversation. It tells me much more about you versus who you make your millions for, or who you make your money for, or who you work really hard for. So obviously, the fact that we've, as a society come together and decided that men will be respected basis how much money they bring in is also the construct of a patriarchal society. Men decided that. Women didn't come around and say. The reason women were also taught to value that is because they said, hey, you will not be able to go out and make money. So your lifestyle will be dictated by the man in your life, and therefore you must learn to value it. So when women are called, gold diggers for wanting to do stuff like that, all they're trying to do is secure their future and secure their children's future, right? They're not trying to dig for gold for themselves. If we were trying to do that, we'd be doing it very differently. Right? And we'd definitely not be struggling for things like equal pay or our right to go out and work. We'd simply just find the richest man in our community and try to endear ourselves to them.